I've decided to start something a bit new on this channel. Considering that I'm a writer, I thought it would be really interesting to reach out to some authors that I've just absolutely loved their books and find out what some of their favourite books are, because we as writers love to read. What inspires us? I think it's amazing. If there's a book that I've really enjoyed by a certain author, I want to know, like, what kind of books do they enjoy that really inspire them and motivate them to write. So the very first author that I reached out to was Gillian Mcallister, who wrote How to Disappear, a book that I read back in August 2020 and absolutely loved. Let me give you the basic premise of that book and my raving review for it before I go into all the books that Gillian Mcallister told me that she really, really loves. So How to Disappear is a thriller about this girl called Zara, and Zara's put into witness protection with her mother after she witnesses a homeless person getting murdered by a bunch of footballers. She has a stepfather and a stepsister, but unfortunately they are not able to join them in their witness protection program. Zara has to now testify anonymously in court as the key witness to this case, but there are some seriously crazed football fans out there that want revenge and think that she's lying through her teeth about what really happened. This book was rife with tension. Sorry, I've been having problems with my tooth, so it might sound a bit funny. I'm trying to talk normally, but I found the whole book to be really well researched, and it was such a good balance between suspense and domestic drama. I was totally sucked into this story. I needed to know what was going to happen. Honestly, it was one of the most addictive books I think I have ever read. So I mean, like, the characters, the mum and the daughter, they did really frustrate me because they were so reckless. But it was really real because, I mean, you never know what you would do in their situation. If you were put into their position and suddenly had to give up your entire life, like, how would you handle it? What would you do? I mean, I found that Mcallister's writing style was just so easy to follow. It flowed really nicely. The whole story was just so engaging. She's written another book called Anything You Do Say, which I'm really, really excited to get to. It has been highly recommended to me. So I reached out to this author. I asked her, what are some of your favourite books? I'm starting this new video thing on my channel, and she told me some books, and some of them I've read, some of them I haven't, but they are all on my list of books to read. So the first book that she mentioned was In the Woods by Tana, and I've had this book downloaded on Audible for longer than I care to admit. It's, yeah, shameful really. It's been a book on my radar for a long, long time. So I decided this morning, I finished up another book that I was busy reading. I was like, all right, let's just dive into it for the purpose of this book, and because it's been on my list for so long. I listened to the very first chapter, which was about an hour long on audio. And yeah, straight off the bat, the writing was stunning, describing this like summer setting and stuff, which I really, really enjoyed, especially as we're slowly, very, very slowly turning into spring, and, you know, the daffodils are blooming, everything's becoming really pretty around here. The sun is slowly creeping out through the clouds. So yeah, I really enjoyed the description so far in this book. I mean, it's, from what I can gather so far, it's told from this detective's point of view. There's been a bunch of murders that have happened and he's investigating them, and then this woman gets put onto the case, and she got to basically choose to be involved. She's one of the only women in this force, basically, which is quite sexist, and they're all kind of like, oh, really, like, why is she here? But it's because she actually she got stabbed in a undercover situation. So yeah, she got injured, and so she got to choose this role. So the opening chapter of this book is told from like 1984 in Dublin, and it's when like all these children are just disappearing in the woods. So then 20 years later, this detective that I just told you about actually turns out to be one of the kids that was found from all that time ago, which is quite a cool little bizarre twist. And then now he is covering a case of this 12-year-old girl who has just been, I think, found murdered in the same woods. So there's quite a lot of similarities between the two cases, 20 years apart. It's the first book in the Dublin Murder Squad series. I've heard so many amazing things about this series from other booktubers. So yeah, I am super excited to get more into it. I really did enjoy the first chapter. And yeah, it's one that, it's quite daunting because I think it's about an 18-hour audiobook, but I have now dedicated myself to it at last. The next book that Gillian Mcallister really enjoyed was Just My Luck by Adele Parks. Now, I've seen this one around, and I'm not sure if it's maybe the cover that's kind of putting me off. It's not like the most appealing of covers in my opinion. I honestly don't know that much about this book, so I'm just going to read you the premise. It's the stuff that dreams are made of. A lottery win so big, it changes everything. For 15 years, Lexi and Jake have played the same 6 numbers with their friends, the Pearsons and the Heathcotes. Over dinner parties, fish and chip suppers, and summer barbecues, they've discussed the important stuff, the kids, marriage, jobs and houses, and they've laughed off their disappointment when they've failed to win anything more than a tenner. But then, one Saturday night, the unthinkable happens. There's a rift in the group. Someone doesn't tell the truth, and soon after, 6 numbers come up which change everything forever. Lexi and Jake have a ticket worth £18 million, and their friends are determined to claim a share of it. Adele returns with a riveting book at the dark side of wealth in this gripping take on friendship, money and betrayal, and good luck gone bad. So, yeah, I'm interested about this one because, to me, the premise isn't all that exciting. I don't know if it's just because me and my complete lack of interest in money as something important in life. I mean, yeah, of course money is important. I could use some, to be honest, but it's never something that I've been very fixated on. So I think this book would potentially maybe irritate me a little bit with its focus on money, but because she loved it, I definitely want to try it, and I will probably download it after I have finished in the woods. That one. Right, the next 3 are books that I have actually read, and some I adored the pants off. Some are from some of my favourite authors. Interesting. Let's dive into those. One of those books is I See You by Clare Mackintosh. Now, I love Clare Mackintosh so much. So I See You. I mean, I really wanted to love this book. I mean, I adored her debut novel, I Let You Go, and I also really enjoyed her most recent one, which was Let Me Lie. And the premise of I See You sounded really exciting to me. So there's this series of crimes, like stalking, thefts, rapes and murders, all against women using public transport. And all of the women, the victims, they're all linked to this really twisted dating website. They didn't sign themselves up though, someone else signed them up in like the London Gazette, in and amongst all these ads, like the classified ads, featuring like escorts and prostitutes. So there were things I did absolutely love about this book. I loved the small bite-sized chapters, all written in like first person by the baddie. I just loved it. It had very much like a You by Caroline Kepnes feel to it, which I really enjoy. I also really loved the insight into technology, and the police procedures definitely seemed well researched, which really isn't that surprising because Mackintosh did spend over a decade in the police force. Overall though, I'm so sad to admit it, but I did find this book slightly disappointing. So I do find for the most part that Clare's books are more on the slower paced side of things, but they all have this like really shocking twist in the end that makes it so worth it. However, I found I See You to just be a little bit too slow paced for me. The main character, Zoe, really irritated me. She was really boring. I wasn't invested in her personal life whatsoever. And to be honest, if you've read this book, you'll know what I mean, or at least I hope you would. When she came face to face with the baddie, I kind of personally believed everything and understood everything that the baddie was saying about her. She was just this really moany, depressing person and seemed very much ungrateful for everything that she had. There's also things I wish had been touched on further. The detective, Kelly, I think her name was, she's this twin, and I really kind of hoped that her relationship with her sister would have been more of a focus. I mean, I know that wasn't really the whole part, the main reason for the book, but Mackintosh does normally alternate chapters between like the main characters and then like the detectives, and she really includes a lot about the police force and their procedures and stuff with, you know, obviously with her background. So I did kind of want more from Kelly. I have a lot more to say about this book, but it would contain spoilers, so I will stop there. The last 2 books that Gillian Mcallister spoke about with me was 2 that I've read and bloody loved. The first one being The Invisible Girl by Jewell. So this book opens up with this troubled young girl called Sapphire Maddox. Something really horrific happened to her at the tender age of 10, and it led to years of self-harm and depression. She goes to this like child psychologist called Rowan Fors, and when he feels like she's ready to do life on her own, he basically says like, sorry, you're out. And she doesn't really feel like she's ready for that. I guess, you know, if you've spent so many, like a long time relying on someone and sharing such personal stuff, then I mean it's hard to like let that go. So she's got like a bit of an attachment to him, and then that quickly turns into an obsession. She starts like following him around and discovering all of his dirty little secrets. And now that she has this information, it can basically destroy his entire life and his marriage. And then we've got this other character called Owen Pick, who is the next door neighbour to Rowan Fors and his family. Now, Owen has been accused of sexual misconduct. He is a teacher. He is also the last person to have seen Maddie alive. I don't know why I called her Maddie. It's Sapphire Maddox. So because he's been accused of this sexual misconduct, then he basically stumbles across this website. I'm really struggling with my teeth today, I'm so sorry. He stumbles across this website all about the incel community, which is something I'll go into a little bit later. As Owen is the last person to see Sapphire Maddox alive, he becomes a #1 suspect in her disappearance. It is a very dark book, covering a lot of hard-hitting topics. You know, sexual assault, rape, self-harm, toxic relationships, loneliness, adultery. This book's got everything. And it also covers this incel community, which I hadn't heard about before and honestly find sickening. The incel community is like an online subculture. They're unable to find romantic relationships and classify themselves as involuntarily celibate. I feel like they carry this heavy weight of masculine rage and blame their lack of intimacy all on women. They believe wholeheartedly in male supremacy. And in my eyes, they are a bunch of misogynistic terrorist bastards. And they have a very dark, very real, disturbing corner of the internet. But okay, rant about that over. I loved Lisa Jewell's writing in this book, absolutely loved it. It is a powerful, enthralling book. It's completely binge-worthy, bizarre, and cryptic. I am not normally one for slow-paced books, but this one, I just could not put it down. I had to figure it all out. It was filled with unlikable characters, which just threw me all over the place. I wouldn't really classify this one as a thriller. I feel like maybe it was marketed incorrectly. It did have a lot of suspense and psychological domestic elements to it, but it is definitely more of a mystery with very thought-provoking and harrowing messages. The main one being that monsters are all around us, hiding in plain sight. Lastly, we've got My Dark Vanessa by Kate Elizabeth Russell, which I gave this book 5 out of 5 whopping stars. This is just an amazing, dark, powerful literary fiction piece, which tackles very taboo and heavy topics, which leaves you feeling really uncomfortable while you're reading it. But there's this poetic writing style to this book that it just makes the whole thing so stunning and unputdownable. I feel like the author really executed this story perfectly. I mean, she doesn't shy away from horrific things like paedophilia, child pornography, rape, sexual assault, suicide. She tackles them all, but in the most incredible way. It's so descriptive and strikingly raw. Incredibly important book about an affair between a teacher and a student. We learn all about this teacher's ways of creating this power and balance, how he manipulates and grooms her. He made her feel like she was in control when really it was the total opposite. And reading this story about Vanessa with the contrasting timelines really leaves a sour taste in your mouth. The intimacy scenes, for instance, are very hard to swallow. let's not sugarcoat it, we are reading about sexual abuse to a minor. Very vivid detail. I do feel this book is so controversial, and I feel like I'm in the minority here, but okay, so I know that Vanessa's brain was not fully developed. She had a lot of societal pressures, but even so, I kind of felt like Vanessa was very manipulative herself. She was conniving, jealous, just like a proper bloody teenager. I found her character really arrogant. I felt like that was a really good portrayal of a standard 15-year-old girl. Even in the chapters where she's now older and looking back and reflecting on stuff, I still found her really selfish and just an awful person, to be honest. It made the read really conflicting for me because I wanted to sympathize with her, but I just couldn't. It's a story I feel is very difficult, probably impossible to really digest properly. There's too many thoughts and emotions and feelings that go on throughout this book that I physically could not process it. And obviously, you know, with what this book covers, I knew Lolita would be a theme in it. So I guess the question is, does this book romanticize student-teacher relationships and basically rape being done to a minor? And I guess my answer to that is, at the end of the day, that is completely up to you, your opinion. I feel like it's, like I said, very important, very vivid, and it needs to be a subject matter that is more freely discussed because, you know, these things do happen, and I don't feel like people should feel like they're ashamed of admitting their stories. Overall, I mean, yeah, I gave this book 5 out of 5 stars. I did feel like the book could have been slightly more condensed, but overall, an absolutely fantastic read. So, Gillian Mcallister, thank you so much for giving me your recommendations. I mean, I haven't read Just My Luck, which I will put onto my list, and having just finished the first chapter of In the Woods, I really enjoyed the writing, the descriptive writing so far, and yeah, you've just had my thoughts on all the other books you mentioned, so there you go. If you haven't read a Gillian Mcallister book, I really highly suggest How to Disappear, and that's pretty much it from me today. I hope that you have a lovely day, and I'll talk to you all soon. Bye!